Good morning. Thank you for watching Ahmed Shakil 5858. I am Ahmed Budnam. I am thankful to all news resources and my team. Following are the news which have been reported by American, European, Canadian, Australian, African, and Asian channels, and also by AFP, AP, and Reuters news agencies. Now the headlines. University of Toronto take legal action against protesters. Death toll is rising in Gaza. Tornadoes causing devastation in Central America. More unpredictable weather is coming. Israel killed 45 civilians in Gaza. In Papua New Guinea, 2,000 people have buried alive. Spain will give more air defense missiles to Ukraine. Iran has more than 313 pounds of uranium enriched up to 60%. USA marks Memorial Day. Basketball legend Bill Walton has died. Did policing has changed in America since Floyd incident? Now the news in detail.
On this Monday night, deadline defiance. The University of Toronto takes legal action after pro-Palestinian protesters ignore the order to move.
They are places where precisely this sort of activity has historically always happened.
As the death toll climbs in Gaza, pressure mounts on Ottawa.
What will it take for this government to take actions to prevent this genocide?
Sex ed controversy. Why New Brunswick's premier banned a non-profit from school presentations. Erasing painful symbols of the past.
I'm so thankful for her.
Helping women released from prison start over with a clean slate. And just roll with it. A rough ride to win the world's cheesiest race.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. Tensions are boiling over at Canada's largest university as demonstrators exert their right to protest. The deadline passed this morning for the pro-Palestinian encampment at the University of Toronto to clear out. Now facing the threat of a potential court injunction, demonstrators say they're staying put until their demands are met. And they're not alone. Similar encampments continue at schools right across Canada after weeks of protesting the war in Gaza. Mike Drolet has our top story tonight.
I believe that we will win!
The deadline for protesters to leave the University of Toronto campus came and went, with nary a police officer in sight. 25 days into this campus protest, demonstrators remained as defiant as ever.
They have issued us a trespass notice and now an injunction, and the reason for this is because the people's strength is threatening to them.
The university served the camp with a trespass notice last week, warning students they could be suspended and participating faculty could be fired. Monday, the University of Toronto filed a court injunction, and a court hearing is scheduled for Tuesday.
As they anxiously await the results of the injunction, an important date is looming, June 3rd, next Monday, which is the beginning of convocation for the university. The university's president has been very clear. He does not want to see what's happening in the protests impact what's happening at Convocation Hall.
We are cautiously optimistic that U of T will do the right thing.
But can the university win? Two separate injunction requests were denied by the Quebec courts related to McGill. And while the Université du Québec à Montréal was granted an injunction, it was about safety, not the removal of protesters.
I think the troubling pattern that we're seeing is that university administrators are succumbing to those pressures, and they are abandoning their principles, and they're forgetting what university really are for, and that is fundamentally for free inquiry, debate, and yes, disagreement, and even protest.
Disclose, divest.
It's a complicated debate that has divided Canadians, although a new poll by the Association for Canadian Studies found that protesters have support of just 19% of Canadians, while 48% of Canadians oppose the encampments.
A majority of people oppose the tactics being employed by the individuals engaged in the encampments and oppose the principles for which they stand.
Meanwhile, negotiations between the two sides continue, even if finding a middle ground seems more and more unlikely. Mike Drolet, Global News, Toronto.
Israel's prime minister says an airstrike that set fire to a camp housing displaced Palestinians in Rafah was, quote, a tragic mishap. At least 45 civilians were killed, along with 2 Hamas commanders. That attack triggered widespread condemnation and defied an order from the UN's top court for Israel to halt its military operations in Rafah. Crystal Gamansing reports on the fallout and a warning that some of the images here are graphic.
A little girl writhing in pain. A man overcome with grief. Those on the ground report people being burned alive in their tents as fire spread following an Israeli airstrike Sunday, a few kilometers from Rafah City. For us, every non-combatant that is hurt is a tragedy, said the Israeli Prime Minister. A full investigation has been promised, but an Israeli government spokesperson says it was focused on a legitimate military target.
The IDF targeted 2 Hamas commanders in Rafah, whose hands were drenched in Israeli blood. Civilian casualties are desperately sad, but this is the war Hamas wanted.
Thousands had been sheltering in the neighborhood that was struck, adhering to evacuation orders sent out prior to Israel seizing control of the Gaza side of the Rafah border crossing. This displacement is approximately the 8th one, says this man. Where are we to go?
It proves that there is no safe place in Gaza. And these attacks take place immediately after the International Court of Justice ordered it to stop all military activities.
Hamas also fired rockets Sunday, activating the Iron Dome around Tel Aviv. European and Arab leaders say security will only come when a two-state solution is implemented. Canada has also been advocating for that, but with the events in Rafah, the NDP is demanding more.
They were burned alive. What will it take for this Liberal government to send a message to Netanyahu that what has happened is inexcusable?
The level of human suffering is catastrophic, and that's why, Mr. Speaker, we need an immediate ceasefire.
A call that has been echoed by many in the international community, but one that has gone unanswered. Crystal Gamansing, Global News, London.
Getting out of Gaza is both difficult and dangerous. Many Palestinians have been forced to pay smugglers tens of thousands of dollars to help them escape into Egypt. Now, those with connections to Canada and hoping to come to this country have faced long processing times, and the government had also capped the number of Palestinian refugees at 1,000. Well, today, Canada's immigration minister revealed that cap will now be raised to 5,000. Ottawa says the refugee security is paramount, but many issues are simply beyond its control. Mackenzie Gray reports.
We want him to escape what's happening and live a normal life.
For Israel Safin, it's an agonizing wait to meet her nephew for the first time, and a massive cost to get her family of 9 out of Gaza.
I paid $70,000 Canadian as a bribe to get them out. And I was lucky. I consider myself lucky to have that chance.
El Safin going into debt to get her family to Egypt, applying in January to bring them to Canada, through a special program granting Gazans with ties to Canada temporary residency.
I applied for the visas. I'm still waiting and spinning, as usual. Processing time is unknown.
That process now expanded, with the immigration minister announcing the program will now admit a maximum of 5,000 Gazans, up from 1,000. But Mark Miller warned the increase won't quickly lead to more arrivals.
Canada does not control the situation on the ground, the exits from Rafah being a particular example of that.
But what Miller's department does control, issuing visas. So far, only 254 Gazans have been approved to come to Canada since the program opened in January, a tiny amount compared to the people fleeing other wars, with nearly 1 million Ukrainians and over 40,000 Afghans able to come to Canada.
It has been a disaster from start to finish. They're essentially stuck because their applications are not being processed.
A similar sentiment from the government's representative on Islamophobia.
They have really not felt that they're being treated in the same equitable manner that they should expect as any Canadian.
The immigration minister says nearly 3,000 people are working their way through the process of getting a visa as of last week. But so far, Jeff, only 41 residents of Gaza have actually made it to Canada.
Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa. Thanks, Mac. A rally was held in Toronto today after an attack over the weekend targeting a Jewish school. Toronto police say 2 suspects fired shots at the Bayis Hayamushka all-girls elementary school in the city's North York neighborhood. That shooting happened early on Saturday, and thankfully no one was injured, though the building did suffer some damage.
In Canada and in Toronto, there is no place for hate. A despicable anti-Semitic act. It was a disgusting attempt to intimidate the community, to fill people with fear.
Police are vowing to step up their patrols of Jewish schools in the region to prevent another attack. A coalition of more than 500 Canadian organizations is calling on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to fulfill his promise to undocumented migrants.
It has been nearly 30 months since this promise of regularization. And throughout this time, undocumented people are continuing to suffer, continuing to be exploited. Those who may be regularized tomorrow are being deported today.
In 2021, the Liberals promised to explore ways of allowing people living in Canada without legal status to apply to become permanent residents. Those include former international students, for example, whose study permits have expired. Estimates suggest as many as 500,000 undocumented migrants are living in Canada. Federal cabinet is expected to review a new proposal over the next couple of weeks. The federal government is responding to criticism from U.S. lawmakers over Canada's lack of defense spending. Nearly 24 U.S. senators signed a bipartisan letter calling on Ottawa to spend 2% of GDP on defense by the end of the decade. Now, Canada says it's committed to reaching its NATO target, though that doesn't appear to jive with reality. Here are the numbers. Right now, Canada is nowhere close and actually falls near the bottom of that list. Mercedes Stevenson joins us now. So, Mercedes, you spoke with the U.S. ambassador about this. He really singled out Canada in that interview. What's been the government's response?
You know, Jeff, David Cohen is such a measured guy, and I have interviewed him as the American ambassador several times, and what he said to us on the West Block on Sunday was by far the most direct or critical I've ever heard him on defense spending, so it really jumped out at me. To say that Canada is the outlier in NATO, not an outlier, but the outlier, articulates a clear frustration from the Biden White House, not just over the lack of spending, but over the lack of how to even get to the 2%, despite claiming that's the goal. Now, the defense minister himself has described the military as entering a death spiral, but when I asked Bill Blair about this on his way into a House committee today, and his reaction to the ambassador's comments, he insisted that he's not concerned about how this is affecting Canada's relationship with Washington.
That relationship is strong. We've been working with them for a very long time. They have every expectation that Canada will, as it always has, do its part.
Allies have been increasingly frustrated, though, Jeff, with Canada's inaction. In fact, I was speaking with a senior national security source who is in direct and regular contact with both Washington and London, and that source told me that our allies in those two capitals are, quote, resigned to the fact that the Trudeau government simply does not care about defense or security, and noted that countries like the UK and Australia have increased their defense spending substantially. The criticism also seems to be directed quite specifically at the Prime Minister and his senior staff, with multiple sources telling me that while Bill Blair does want to spend more, the bottleneck appears to be happening when things get to PMO.
All right, and Mercedes, this fresh criticism comes as Canada's military is in the midst of some pretty significant personnel changes at the very top. So how does that factor into all of this?
Yeah, sources are telling me the Canadian forces are experiencing a really chaotic time because while there is a chief of defense staff, that's Wayne Eyre, he's retiring and no new chief has been announced yet. That means, according to several sources, that senior generals and admirals are sort of surreptitiously conducting informal handovers before their change of command because no one's announced who is going where yet. And that's not only impacting the military operationally, which the chief of defense staff has set himself publicly, but it's also affecting many military families who don't know when or if or where they're going to be posted across the country because of that.
Mercedes Stevenson in Ottawa. Thanks, Mercedes. Turning now to the wildfire situation in Western Canada, and good news for residents of Fort Nelson, BC, who were finally able to head home. The evacuation order from the Parker Lake fire was lifted this morning more than 2 weeks after 4,700 residents were forced to leave their homes. Now, they're not completely out of danger just yet. Crews are still fighting the fire west of the community, which remains out of control. It's already destroyed 4 homes and damaged at least 6 properties. And wild weather in the U.S. killed at least 21 people after a tornado interrupted the Memorial Day long weekend. Northern parts of Texas were hit particularly hard. Buildings in the town of Valley View, just north of Dallas, were pulverized by the storm. 125 people sought shelter inside this gas station. Incredibly, no one was seriously hurt. And tonight there are warnings of more severe weather all along the eastern U.S., from Alabama to New York. The government in Papua New Guinea says more than 2,000 people are now feared dead in a landslide that buried entire villages. Desperate people using sticks and their bare hands to dig through the mud and debris. Rescue crews are struggling to bring in heavy equipment because the area is so remote and treacherous. This satellite imagery shows what the area looked like before and then after the landslide crashed through 6 villages on Friday. New Brunswick's premier is fired up. Coming up, why he's banning a non-profit group from holding sex ed presentations. Welcome back. A Montreal-based sexual education organization has been banned from New Brunswick schools. The move was brought in by the province's premier over what Blaine Higgs calls clearly inappropriate material shown to high school students during a recent presentation. Heidi Petracek has the details and reaction from the nonprofit group.
At a time when teens want better sex education in schools,
I feel like they could teach us some more about it.
A recent presentation on sexual health and relationships to New Brunswick high schoolers proved too much for the province's premier. Blaine Higgs posted this image from the talk, which posed questions such as, is it normal to watch porn, on social media? Also writing, to say I am furious would be a gross understatement. Higgs has banned the nonprofit involved from the province, even as its president says that image was taken out of context.
For example, we cover the importance of abstinence and the importance of consent. We talk about HIV/AIDS, and we dismantle a lot of myths.
When politics sort of enters into the conversation, it tends to create a chill.
And for the head of the Sex Information and Education Council of Canada, that can get in the way of giving teens accurate information in schools.
If we allow the internet to be the sexual health educators of our youth, that would be the worst of all possible situations.
The Premier's messaging on this takes place against the backdrop of his government's controversial move last year to require parental consent before teachers can use a student's preferred name and pronouns, a move that's now the subject of 2 court actions.
He has built a political wedge with respect to parents and children in education.
No coincidence, she says, that the Premier's post came the same day his Progressive Conservative Party sent the same message in an email asking for political donations.
He is trying to use this as an issue that he feels will resonate with voters who are concerned about something that they may call a woke agenda.
That will be tested in the provincial election later this year, as a government that's turned gender policies into politics hopes to hold on to power. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
Busted, still ahead, hundreds of criminal charges in connection with a major Ontario auto theft scheme. Police west of Toronto revealed the results of a major auto theft investigation. Peel Regional Police say 369 stolen vehicles worth more than $33 million have now been recovered. 16 people are facing more than 300 criminal charges as part of the months-long investigation.
Since October of 2023, we have been investigating hundreds of stolen autos that have been destined for foreign markets. This is a highly orchestrated criminal operation where several individuals were responsible for stealing the vehicles through various methods that include violent carjackings for the intention of shipping overseas.
Police say the vehicles were stolen from across the Greater Toronto area and then shipped to the United Arab Emirates and Oman. Investigators allege a family-owned trucking company was responsible for transporting those stolen vehicles to the port of Montreal. The accused range in age from 17 to 57, and warrants have now been issued for 10 additional suspects. A clean slate. Up next, the Manitoba program helping inmates heal from trauma. There were thrills and spills in the UK during the annual Cooper's Hill cheese rolling competition. The race sees competitors run down that extremely steep hill while chasing a cheese wheel. Yes, you heard that right. It's dangerous. Each event typically sees several participants injured. And the prize? That wheel of cheese, of course, which clocks in at a whopping 7 pounds or a little over 3 kilograms. Hope you don't eat that in one sitting. Turning now to a program in Manitoba that is helping inmates prepare for life beyond bars. It's called Mother Ink, and it gives them a chance to get rid of tattoos tied to trauma. Marnie Blunt explains.
Removing a tattoo can be a painful process. But for Jenna Millette, it's also removing painful memories.
I'm removing from a bad relationship and a bad time in my life. And this one here, I'm having removed because it was done when I was 13 in somebody's basement, and the guy ended up sexually assaulting me.
The tattoos tied to trauma in her past.
Every time I look at it, it just reminds me.
It was while Millette was incarcerated at Headingley Women's Correctional Centre for drug-related charges that she heard about Mother Ink tattoo removal.
I'm hoping that removing it will help me be able to finally stay clean, stay away from all the bad things, and hopefully start over. So we're just doing my little 3 dots here.
A similar situation and hope for Lavina DeLorme.
I want to kind of erase
that part of my past. When I do look at it, I always think of like a lot of bad memories, some of the bad stuff that I've done growing up.
Mother Inc. owner Della Stanke started doing tattoo removals while working at a halfway house about 10 years ago. Last month, she started working on inmates inside Headingley Men's Correctional Center.
The reason why they're getting them off is not only to change their life, be able to get housing, be able to get a job without these tattoos on their face or neck or anything, but a big thing is just trauma.
Mother Inc. is hoping to soon expand into other prisons in Manitoba, letting people like Millette and Delorme start over.
I'm so thankful for it because every other time I try to get clean, get my life together, I've fallen off the rails because of stuff that reminds me of things that happened in the past. So I'm hoping this will help me actually be able to move forward.
Arnie Blunt, Global News, Winnipeg.
And that is Global National for this Monday night. I'm Jeff Semple. Tonight's Your Canada is the Leaf, an indoor horticultural attraction in Winnipeg. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.
Good evening, I'm Amna Navaz.
And I'm Jeff Bennett. On the NewsHour tonight, a wave of deadly tornadoes leaves a path of destruction across much of the country, as forecasters predict an above-average number of hurricanes this season.
Global outcry after 45 people are killed in an Israeli airstrike on a tent camp in Rafah.
And on this Memorial Day, how advancements in DNA technology are helping identify the more than 80,000 U.S. service personnel still missing in action.
Every one of these missing service members is a fallen hero. And so the least that we can do is honor them by trying to continue to push the science to bring them home.
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been provided by, made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the NewsHour. Tonight we're tracking two major stories. Global outcry continued today after an Israeli airstrike on a tent camp in the southern Gaza city of Rafah killed dozens of Palestinians. We'll have more on that shortly.
But first, back here in the U.S., emergency responders and crews are continuing to search through the wreckage from a wave of tornadoes that hit the south. At least 22 people were killed in this weekend's storms, including 4 children. Hundreds of thousands lost power, and the storms cut brutal paths of destruction through many towns. Terrifying scenes during a weekend of tumultuous storms, and officials are warning of more dangerous weather to come. Over the holiday weekend, tornadoes tore through 4 states in the south. In Valley View, Texas, winds reached 135 miles per hour, killing at least 7 people and injuring about 100 others. More than 200 buildings were damaged, including this gas station where people were sheltering.
It was scary. The most horrific thing I've ever gone through.
It's on a disaster declaration. Nearly a third of all Texas counties are in a state of emergency. Texas Governor Greg Abbott spoke shortly after seeing the devastation for himself in Valley View.
Kennelly's been a harrowing week, with lives lost, property reduced to rubble. The hopes and dreams of Texas families and small businesses have literally been crushed by storm after storm.
Across Oklahoma, the strong winds uprooted trees and toppled power lines. Earlier today, rescue efforts continued as Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders toured ravaged areas.
Thank you.
Heavy rain lashed northwest Arkansas throughout the night. Trees downed by the storm damaged cars and blocked access into neighborhoods. In Kentucky, Governor Andy Beshear declared a state of emergency earlier today. This morning, more than 187,000 Kentuckians were still without power.
Right now, we're working to get different generators from our sources that we have here in the state and around it. Right now, we're providing assistance from the state level to our counties.
This weekend's turbulent weather came after a week of severe storms across the nation. Last Tuesday, a tornado killed 5 people and injured dozens in Iowa. Forecasters warned residents from Alabama to New York to stay on high alert as the storm moves east. May and June tend to be the most active months for tornadoes in the U.S., but some experts say this tornado season is looking like the most active since 2017. To get a better understanding of what's happening now and the concerns as hurricane season approaches, we're joined by Jeff Baradelli, chief meteorologist for WFLA-TV in Tampa, Florida. Jeff, thanks so much for being with us. So put this into context for us. How intense is this season compared to seasons past?
We've seen a lot of tornadoes, a lot of severe weather, especially during the month of May. In fact, it's the second most active we've seen since 2010. We've seen a lot of tornadoes, somewhere close to about 1,000 tornadoes across the United States. And given what we've seen the past couple of decades or so, it certainly is a very active yield signal. Other part of it is natural variability, and which is that El Nino and La Nina cycle.
Jeff Baradelli is chief meteorologist with WFLA-TV in Tampa, Florida. Jeff, thanks so much for being with us this evening. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
More now on yesterday's Israeli airstrike on a tent camp in Rafah. At least 45 Palestinians were killed, according to local health officials. Israel said it was targeting 2 Hamas leaders. This comes just days after the International Court of Justice ordered Israel to halt its offensive. Panic and horror in Rafah last night as flames raged through a camp for displaced Palestinians. Paul said he was, quote, outraged by the Israeli strikes, saying these operations must stop. There are no safe areas in Rafah for Palestinian civilians.
In the day's other headlines, a government official in Papua New Guinea says more than 2,000 people were buried alive in Friday's landslide. That figure is roughly 3 times an earlier UN estimate of 670 fatalities. The landslide crushed a village in the mountainous Enga province in the country's north. As of Monday, only 5 bodies had been recovered. Villagers are using sticks, shovels, and their hands to dig in the mud. The International Organization for Migration is leading a response. The group's chief of mission says locals are trying to protect the bodies of the dead.
And because of the sensitivities involved with respect to mourning and grieving we have been told,
until yesterday, people were not necessarily very keen on welcoming heavy machinery because they would like to preserve the integrity of the courses.
That same official says that the damage to the roadways and the risk of more landslides have also complicated rescue efforts. Spain pledged today to supply Ukraine with more air defense missiles as part of a weapons package announced last month. In Madrid today, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky thanked Spain's prime minister for his commitment, but Zelensky said his forces will need at least 7 additional Patriot air defense systems to launch the missiles in order to keep up with Russia's onslaught.
Russia uses over 3,000 guided aerial bombs against people per month. Spain itself cannot close this issue, but there are enough Patriot systems in the world. We need to work together and put pressure not only on Russia, but also on our partners to give us the opportunity to defend ourselves.
The additional aid from Spain comes as the death toll from an attack on a large hardware store in Kharkiv this weekend rose to 18. 5 others are still missing. Iran has further enlarged its stockpile of uranium enriched to near weapons-grade levels. That's according to a confidential report by the International Atomic Energy Agency. The findings show that Iran now has more than 313 pounds of uranium enriched up to 60%. That's an increase of nearly 15% from the watchdog's last report in February. Uranium enriched at 60% purity is just a short step away from weapons-grade levels. Iran has quickly stepped up enrichment since 2018, when then-President Donald Trump unilaterally withdrew the U.S. from Tehran's nuclear deal with world powers. Iran maintains that its nuclear program is peaceful, but the IAEA has warned the country has enough material to manufacture several nuclear bombs should it choose to. It has been a day of remembrance and reverence across the country as the nation marks Memorial Day. Arlington National Cemetery hosted its 156th annual observance ceremony this morning. As is tradition, President Biden honored the service and sacrifice of our fallen troops by laying a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Afterward, he reminded the nation what those service members were defending.
Decade after decade, tour after tour, these warriors fought for our freedom and the freedom of others. Because freedom has never been guaranteed. Every generation has to earn it, fight for it, defend it in battle between autocracy and democracy, between the greed of a few and the rights of many.
This afternoon, thousands gathered along Constitution Avenue in Washington, D.C. to watch the National Memorial Day Parade. This year's event was led by surviving World War II service members ahead of the 80th anniversary of D-Day next month. And a passing of note, basketball legend Bill Walton has died after a long battle with cancer. Walton won 2 championships at UCLA before going on to win 2 more titles in the NBA. The larger-than-life center was once the league MVP and was enshrined in the Hall of Fame in 1993. After his playing days ended, Walton became a beloved broadcaster. The American Sportscasters Association named Walton one of the top 50 sports broadcasters of all time. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver today said he was truly one of a kind. Bill Walton was 71 years old. Still to come on the NewsHour, a look at how policing has changed 4 years after the murder of George Floyd. Tamara Keith and Amy Walter break down the latest political headlines. And members of the class of 2024 reflect on their unique school experience.
This is the PBS NewsHour from WETA Studios in Washington and in the West from
NewsHour.
And join us again here tomorrow night as we get the latest as the closing arguments begin in former President Donald Trump's criminal hush money trial. And that is the NewsHour for tonight. I'm Jeff Bennett.
And I'm Amna Navaz. On behalf of the entire NewsHour team, thank you for joining us.
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been
Tonight, breaking news. The severe weather threat moves to the East Coast after a weekend of deadly tornadoes. 70 million Americans now on alert. Damaging wind gusts, large hail, and danger lasting through the night, already forcing ground stops at major airports. A tornado watch for the Washington, D.C. area. Much of the Northeast under a severe thunderstorm watch. All of this coming at the end of a deadly holiday weekend. At least 21 people were killed. More than 70 reported tornadoes across 12 states. Some of the worst damage was in Texas, a gas station where dozens were sheltering. What it looked like inside as the structure was destroyed by a 135-mile-per-hour tornado. Hundreds of thousands without power. All of this during what's already been a record-breaking travel weekend, and as millions of Americans head home. Gio Benitez from LaGuardia Airport, Maria Villarreal from Texas, and Tamar Theodore standing by to time it all out. The desperate search in the southwestern Pacific as hopes fade of finding any more survivors following a massive landslide in Papua New Guinea. Families searching for their loved ones. More than 2,000 people feared buried. James Longley with the latest. Israel responds in the aftermath of its deadly airstrike on a Rafah refugee camp. At least 50 people were killed, more than 200 injured. Prime Minister Netanyahu calls it a tragic mishap. Britt Clement reports tonight from Israel. The urgent search for suspects in the death of a former General Hospital actor. Officials say Johnny Wachter was killed during a robbery, what his friends and family are saying tonight. Former President Trump prepares for a crucial week ahead as his hush money trial nears its end. Eric Katursky is here to break it all down. Tributes pour in for a basketball legend, Bill Walton, giant on and off the court. We look back at his life and career. Mid-air scare aboard a Spirit Airlines flight from Jamaica. Passengers putting on life jackets. Health concerns forced Bruce Springsteen to postpone concerts in Europe. And America Strong tonight. We hear again from the young man on a mission to honor the last of the greatest generation, how he's commemorating this Memorial Day.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is...
Tonight, those deadly severe storms on the move as millions return home. The violent weather moving east. More than 60 reported tornadoes ripping across a dozen states this holiday weekend. At least 23 people killed. Entire neighborhoods leveled. A gas station collapsing as 125 people were sheltering inside. Tonight, more than 60 million at risk from Texas to New York. Major cities in the path. Tornado watches in multiple states and Washington, D.C. We're tracking it all. It comes as a record number of Americans are traveling right now. The weather delaying thousands of flights. Also tonight, the General Hospital star shot and killed during a suspected robbery. The search for the gunman. An Israeli airstrike targeting Hamas, hitting a tent camp, killing dozens of Palestinians. Prime Minister Netanyahu calling it a tragic incident. The global outrage tonight. The urgent search for survivors in Papua New Guinea. A catastrophic landslide hitting in the middle of the night. More than 2,000 feared buried alive. The horrifying rampage inside a U.S. movie theater. 4 girls stabbed, but surviving. 3 of them sisters. Their mother speaking out. The midair scare for boxer Mike Tyson. The medical emergency he suffered on a cross-country flight. And on this Memorial Day, a final salute to a Pearl Harbor hero. More than 80 years in the making.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
It's Memorial Day and Americans nationwide hitting the beach and firing up their grills to kick off the unofficial start to the summer season, but we cannot forget the true meaning of today, remembering the men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. We honor and salute our military heroes today and every day. And coming up on The 5, we have a jam-packed show for you. We are facing off in a summer shopping showdown with some of our favorite Bed Bath & Beyond items, and we will also answer your fan mail questions. But first, we are diving right in with some hot topics to celebrate the summer season in the fastest. Are you ready? So first up, Americans are ready to pack up their cars and hit the open road. A new survey shows that the majority of travelers nationwide are planning to take a road trip this summer. And I know, Jimmy Failey, you guys love a road trip.
How about it? Not only am I taking a road trip, but apparently I'm selling used cars.
Okay, that's good.
If anybody needs one.
Where do you like to go?
The Fairless Summer Road Trip is officially on the books this summer. We're starting July 5th at my stand-up gig in Vegas, and we're driving until July 13th to Colorado Springs. So we're going to go through Arizona, we're going to go through New Mexico, and then somewhere around the Colorado border, my wife will probably get out and rent a separate car and meet me pick it up in Colorado
North
Springs.
And go to Colorado.
Yeah, she'll meet us in Colorado.
And you'll be seeing my sister Angie in
And
Colorado.
me and Angie are going to get rowdy.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking was going to happen. And Judge Janine Pirro, do you like a road trip?
I love a road trip.
Okay, do you have one planned?
No.
Where would you like to go if you could?
I'll go anywhere. I love to go, but nobody will accept me with my dogs. So we're going to go around the block a few times. I'll tell the dogs that we went to Connecticut and New Jersey, and we'll come home.
You know the road trip I'd like to do is near going upstate New York, like the Adirondacks. I've never done that.
You know, I used to always take a road trip to see my mom in upstate New York, and I may take that road trip and visit her.
Little nostalgia. Yeah. Indeed. Harold Ford Jr., do you like to pack up the kids, or are you just jet setting everywhere?
No. So we're going to spend a little time in Michigan over the summer, up in Harbor Springs, and the kids will get a chance to get a lot of outdoor stuff. And we'll spend a little time on Long Island also. But I want to take my kids across Tennessee. I want to start them in Memphis and we go all the way across the state. I used to do that as a kid. We'd go back and forth. My dad was in Congress. We'd come home and get out of school from D.C. Then we'd drive back at the end of summer. And we'd take 2 or 3 days and do it. I think my kids could only withstand, and we could only withstand them if we were going across state, not all the way back to New York. So we'll see if we can get that done this summer.
Do you like road trips?
No, I hate road trips.
Because of traffic?
Because of traffic.
Are you a strict dad in the car for a road trip?
We don't take road trips, so I don't have the opportunity.
I'm really good in a road trip.
Why?
Yeah, I know when to be quiet and when to tell a story. I'm good with the radio or the audiobook or the podcast, whatever it might be. And I used to read a map very well. Peter will be dying. He's like, no, you couldn't. I really could read a map.
Who drives? You drive?
Peter mostly drives, yeah.
What, do you like that?
Yeah. Are you kidding me? I love that he drives. Are you kidding me? I'll tell you my favorite places I have not done. Well, a place that I went on a road trip that I love that you should do. Blue Ridge Mountains, unbelievable. Yep. I also, from Calgary to Jasper in Canada, that is an amazing trip. And Glacial National Park is somewhere I've never done a road trip in, and I'd like to.
How about it? Western Colorado. Gorgeous.
Yeah, indeed. Ouray Mountains and all that. All right. Up next, we all know barbecued burgers and hot dogs are summer favorites, but what about the sides? Well, one study finds the top 5 best cookout sides are creamy potato salad, Mexican street corn salad, Mediterranean pasta salad, coleslaw, and mac and cheese. Harold Ford Jr., you like any of those?
The coleslaw. I'm a hamburger guy. I'm a barbecue rib guy, and I'll grill a lot of chicken on this. And I like coleslaw. And potato salad?
Yeah, creamy potato salad.
I like creamy potato salad.
I like a vinaigrette potato salad.
Yes, that's the best. Vinaigrette potato salad is the best. Women will eat more as long as it's vinaigrette, not creamy.
I like vinegar in a coleslaw, but I like it.
Oh, it's great with a potato too, with parsley and a little. But you know, they talk about the sides. The sides that I do are very ethnic. So I'll make like hummus, and I'll make like a baba ganoush, and I'll make tabbouleh, that kind of thing. What are you laughing at?
Baba ganoush. What is baba ganoush anyway?
It's eggplant. Oh. Would you like me? You don't like it.
I love your baba ganoush.
Yeah. Do you like what kind of size do you like?
I like when they put a watermelon block with feta cheese and a toothpick. That's a road trip dish.
Mac and cheese and cornbread. Those are the go-tos with barbecue. You got mac and cheese. Barbecue is a comfort food. And there's a reason every barbecue establishment in the world gives you cornbread. It is supposed to be there. And I think this polling is reflective of a carb-conscious people looking to get their summer body. But once you get that Instagram filter to make you look skinny, you're going back to the cornbread.
Yeah, I mean,
stop kidding yourself.
Mediterranean pasta salad I've never had.
You had barbecue? What is the Mediterranean?
Well, I think that you throw a few cucumbers, tomatoes, feta cheese, olives.
That's great.
Yeah. So I mean, look at how integrated America has become. Mexican street corn, everything. All right. Next up, your beach day may just be what the doctor ordered. Researchers say being near the ocean can reduce your blood pressure, and taking a walk in the sand decreases stress levels and promotes mindfulness. Does anyone here not like to walk on the beach? Everybody. I mean, sand is the thing.
Yeah. Obviously, I get hit on a lot because of my body. I'm just a human too. This is not a Baywatch reboot. But no, I'm very pro beach. I grew up on Long Island, so it's we went to Jones Beach.
Yeah, I think pro beach.
A big beach walk guy. Love it. And also, we wouldn't be alive without the sun. I don't like the people that wear the hats, the umbrella tents. They put their children in burqas because they're afraid. Relax, people. The sun's been around for a long time. It's not going to kill you.
Yeah, but the problem is some people have to do that because they're so fair, that it develops into skin cancer.
Okay,
you have to protect your children, Jesse.
Okay, Dr. Pirro.
Thank you. I do have a juris doctor. Thank you.
Yes, she does have.
I'm the minority. I'm not a big beach guy. My wife and kids are. They get up every morning.
You are a minority, but we don't look at you. You're just one of the team.
On that note, up next, would you be willing to ditch yourself for the sun? Nearly a third of Americans claim they would be able to disconnect and power down their phones for the entire summer. The entire summer?
I don't believe this.
I mean, we have to work.
I believe every one of these people is bringing an iPad. You know what I mean? They're all like, oh, I get disconnected from my phone. Yeah, because it's on your watch, it's on your iPad.
Right.
They're all doing
all connected. I mean, that's a nice idea to think about.
I would be so anxious that I was missing something, or I'm not able to connect with someone. I would be apoplectic. I really would.
But if no one needed to get in touch with you, like if you're not working and no one needed to get in touch with you,
well, you never know when your kids need you.
Well, we're in the news business, so we can't do it.
Right.
Then we get on air and we don't know what happened today.
Yeah.
Which sometimes that happens.
Harold Ford Jr. and you.
I try to leave it off an hour in the morning on Saturday, but I have TVs on everywhere, so the news I'm going to get. And as long as my kids and wife are there, I try not to look at the phone before 9 or 10.
I think it would give us perspective, though. Like for social media, I think if you stayed off it for a week, you'd realize how unnecessary most of it is.
Yeah.
For instance, dinner pictures, okay, not necessary.
No,
20 years ago, if you would take a picture of your dinner and go show it to strangers, they would put you in a home. There's something wrong with it.
They'd be like, why do you have a picture of this TV dinner?
You went to the trouble to develop this picture and bring it back and show strangers, they'd put you in
I'm
a home.
trying to think of the brand of the TV dinners. What were they?
Swanson.
Swanson.
Oh, yeah.
And finally, summer may just be starting, but Americans never want it to end. It reveals 40% of people look forward to the season the most every year, with over 60% saying they wish summer lasted longer. Hey, Judge, with global warming, they might get their wish.
Gee, the problem is it doesn't last longer, so I don't know that they're going to get their wish. I love the summer. I love the sun. Without the sun, I feel like the world is heavy.
And Harold Ford Jr., you want longer summer, longer fall? Football season?
I like the fall. I like the smell of a fireplace. I like the smell of pork cooking, and I love to turn on and watch Michigan play football. So I love fall.
Jesse Waters.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to being a snowbird when I can just winter in the Florida and then do summers out here in the Northeast. That would be fine with me. And you can still watch football.
Very unpretentious of you.
Yes.
As you sip mojitos and eat your watermelon.
As a lifelong cab driver in the city, we actually preferred winter because when it warms up, you can smell the city.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's actually better to be in the cab.
Not
Tonight, millions of Americans are recovering from severe storms and tornadoes.
I knew something was bad. We heard it. It lasted a couple minutes. Pretty devastating.
And the threat's not over yet. What's ahead for those traveling home on this Memorial Day?
Nothing's going off today because of the weather. We're really upset about it.
The CBS Evening News starts now. Tonight, 62 million Americans are under threat of severe weather from Alabama to New York. Good evening and thank you for being with us on this Memorial Day. I'm Maurice Dubois in for Nora O'Donnell. Tonight's storms are part of the same system that brought deadly tornadoes to the central U.S. this weekend. This is Valley View, Texas, where tornadoes bulldoze through, turning homes into unrecognizable piles of lumber and metal. At least 23 people have been killed, including 2 children in Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Kentucky, and Virginia. The force of the winds clear from the sheer scale of the damage tonight. Now that system is drenching parts of the Northeast, slowing down returning travelers. More than 5,000 flights have been delayed in major hubs like Atlanta, Chicago, and New York, with alerts posted up and down the East Coast. CBS's Meg Oliver starts us off with more of these catastrophic storms.
Shattered homes and debris litter the landscape across Valley View, Texas, after Saturday night's tornado killed 7 people, including 2 children in Cook County. Others barely survived.
The loudest thing I ever heard. I've never been through anything like that before.
A dark, terrifying scene as an EF2 tornado with 135-mile-per-hour winds ripped through this truck.
Through the plains, we can see some flooding, Maurice, that could extend all the way through the end of the week.
Okay, Mike Bettis, thank you. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu tonight calling a fiery airstrike at a tent camp in Rafah a tragic mistake. At least 45 people are dead, hundreds more wounded in that camp for displaced Palestinians. Those numbers are only increasing the international condemnation of Israel. CBS's Imtiaz Tayeb is in East Jerusalem with the disturbing images of the aftermath. Following the series of airstrikes by Israeli warplanes, fire raged
over concerns for the safety of civilians.
Imtiaz Tayeb in East Jerusalem tonight, thank you. Police in Los Angeles are searching for the gunman who shot and killed a former TV soap actor. 37-year-old Johnny Wachter was best known for his role on General Hospital. Family members say Wachter was killed early Saturday when he approached 3 men who were trying to steal the catalytic converter from his car. They are a common target, and thieves sell them for the precious metals inside. Turning to the presidential election, tonight we are a month away from the first debate, a head-to-head rematch between the current and former presidents, as Donald Trump returns to a Manhattan courtroom tomorrow for closing arguments in the so-called hush money trial. CBS's Robert Costa with a look ahead.
Donald Trump spent Memorial Day weekend campaigning
that Trump is a threat to American democracy. Maurice.
Robert Costa, thank you. Today the nation paused to honor the service members who made the ultimate sacrifice for their country. Generation has to fight for it and defend it. Tonight, the sports world is remembering Basketball Hall of Famer Bill Walton, the 2-time NBA champion, died today at 71 after a long battle with cancer. CBS's Elise Preston on one of the most...
Hello, you're watching ABC News. I'm Ross Childs. Here are the top stories. Police hope pathology tests will provide clues about the identity and health of a mother who might have given birth on the banks of the Sydney River. A placenta and umbilical cord were found yesterday on the edge of the Cooks River at Earlwood. Police divers and a specialist dog team have been searching the site. Foreign Minister Penny Wong has joined international condemnation of an Israeli airstrike in Rafah, which killed Palestinians sheltering in a refugee camp. Officials in Gaza say at least 45 people, including women and children, were killed after the strike set fire to their tents. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has described the attack as a tragic mistake. UN agencies are working to support Papua New Guinea residents affected by a massive landslide in the country's highlands. PNG's government estimates more than 2,000 people could be buried under several metres of rubble. Australia is providing humanitarian assistance, technical support and basic supplies to the disaster zone. And First Nations delegates from several countries are meeting in New South Wales for the International Indigenous Fishing Symposium. Advocates are working with First Nations groups from around the world to increase awareness of traditional fishing areas and cultural practices. More now on our top story. Police say they're racing against the clock to find a mother and a newborn baby after the discovery of a placenta and umbilical cord on the banks of the Sydney River. Reporter Nabil Al-Nashar has more from Elwood.
This is one of 3 major efforts attempted by the police at the moment to try and find this mother and her child. The umbilical cord and placenta that were found here yesterday have been taken in for forensic analysis, which the police say they've put a rush on it. The results may even come out in the next few hours. And that's precisely because of the kind of information it could...
National issues.
Join us for Worldview right here on France 24.
Hello, you're watching Daybreak here on France 24. I'm Haxi Myers-Balkin. These are today's headlines. The UN Security Council convenes an emergency meeting this Tuesday following an Israeli airstrike on a tent encampment in the southern Gaza city of Rafah that killed 45 people. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu admitting a tragic mistake amid growing international outcry. Spain, Ireland and Norway prepare to formally recognise a Palestinian state today. Israel slamming the move as a reward for terrorism, as it orders the Spanish consulate in Jerusalem to stop offering services to Palestinians from this Saturday. And France lifts a state of emergency in its overseas Pacific territory of New Caledonia, but maintains a curfew. Part of the latest efforts to get pro-independence factions to remove dozens of roadblocks after 2 weeks of deadly unrest. Great to have you with us. Also coming up in Daybreak today in our press review, is it adios for Rafael Nadal? The 14-time French Open winner bows out in just 3 sets in the first round of the Grand Slam. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has described an Israeli airstrike in the southern Gaza city of Rafah as a terrible mistake. The strike on Sunday night sparked a fire at a tent encampment housing displaced Palestinians, killing at least 45 people. That figure coming from the enclave's Hamas-run health ministry and also the Palestinian Red Crescent Rescue Service. The incident sparking yet more international condemnation of Israel's war in Gaza, including from its closest allies. Sophie Lamotte has the latest.
A refugee camp, up in flames, burning through the night. As the sun rises in Rafah, images of charred bodies and screams of horror flood the internet and resonate around the globe, prompting massive protest in major capitals around, according to Qatar, key mediator between the two parties.
Relations between Israel and the European Union have reached a new low as Spain and Ireland this Tuesday, along with Norway, prepare to formally recognise a Palestinian state. In response, Israel's Foreign Minister Israel Katz told Spain that its consulate in Jerusalem will no longer be allowed to provide assistance to Palestinians. Punishment, said Katz, for, quote, rewarding terror, a reference to Hamas's 7th of October massacre in southern Israel that sparked the current war. But for more, we can bring in France 24's Oliver Farry. Hi, Oliver.
Good morning.
Just how significant is this recognition of Palestinian statehood by European countries, to European countries, and what exactly is it going to change?
Well, it's not going to have much of an effect immediately. It's not going to change facts on the ground. It won't, in of itself, bring about a ceasefire. It's not going to persuade Israel to stop mass motion, rather than a support for them.
Oliver Farry, thank you very much. The UN's nuclear agency says that talks with Iran have been suspended. That in the wake of the death of Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi just over a week ago in a helicopter crash. That same agency publishing a new confidential report that warns that Iran has further increased its stockpile of uranium enriched to near weapons-grade levels. North Korea has announced that its latest attempt to launch a new military reconnaissance satellite ended in failure on Monday when a newly developed rocket engine exploded during flight. Pyongyang oversaw 2 other fiery crashes last year, but in November it did successfully place its first spy satellite in orbit. Sophie Lamotte has the latest.
Barely visible to the naked eye, this is a North Korean rocket being launched into space, before exploding mid-air, illuminating the night sky. A failed attempt to deploy the country's second spy satellite, which nonetheless set alarm bells ringing in neighbouring Japan and South Korea.
The launch that was forced despite our repeated requests to stop is especially problematic for the safety of aircraft and ships, as well as for the protection of those in the affected region.
The launch took place amid a trilateral summit between Tokyo, Seoul and Beijing, the first of its kind in 5 years. Economic cooperation was the main item on the agenda, but the 3 countries also pledged to denuclearize the Korean peninsula, a provocation, according to Pyongyang. After several failures, North Korea successfully sent a spy satellite into orbit last November, much needed to monitor military activities of the US and South Korea in the region, according to Pyongyang. But for the UN, these satellites are used as a cover for testing long-range missile technology.
The so-called satellite launch that North Korea announced is a flagrant violation of Security Council resolutions, and the international community must respond decisively.
Seoul and the US have repeatedly accused the North of sending weapons to Moscow to use in its war in Ukraine, in return for technical assistance in its space and nuclear program.
Papua New Guinea says it's evacuating almost 8,000 people amid fears of a repeat of the catastrophic landslide that potentially killed more than 2,000 people on Sunday. The government requesting urgent search and rescue assistance from the international community after that remote highland village was all but destroyed. Eliza Herbert has the latest.
In the Enga province, Papua New Guinea, villagers mourn a community lost. It's been several days since a landslide consumed the Yambali village in the early hours of Friday morning. While the chance of survivors has faded, still the people persist, hoping to recover the bodies of their loved ones.
We don't know where the bodies are buried, but we won't give up. We will keep going. The large volume of soil and rocks are making it too difficult for us, so we're using manual labor with spades and iron rods to dig. If we're lucky, we will find the bodies. Otherwise, they're buried forever.
Government agencies fear that more than 2,000 people were buried, a death toll far greater than the initial 670 estimated by the UN. These satellite images show the scale of the disaster, the remoteness of the region, and the landslide covering an area the size of 3 or 4 football fields. Papua New Guinea is a South Pacific island nation off the northern coast of Australia. The landslide occurred in the remote north of the country in a village of at least 4,000 people, some 600 kilometres from the capital, Port Moresby, in the Enga province. The Papua New Guinea Defence Force and international aid organisations have been working to evacuate people and deliver food and water to the region. But their reports from the ground have described the situation as grim, with numerous challenges to relief efforts. Rocks are still falling, soil is still cracking, and water flowing beneath the debris has prompted fears that the ground will slide even further.
The French overseas territory of New Caledonia is no longer under a state of emergency. That decision not to renew the measure, intended, according to the Office of the President, to facilitate dialogue between the various entities of the archipelago's pro-independence movement, the hope being that those groups will order citizens to dismantle the barricades that have brought parts of New Caledonia to a standstill over the past 2 weeks of deadly violence. Delano de Souza reports.
A fragile calm returns to New Caledonia. A state of emergency was lifted on Monday, with French authorities prioritising a return to order. Paris is sending additional gendarmes to the overseas territory, putting the total number to over 3,500.
The priority is calm, a return to calm, a spirit of responsibility. That's what I've called for, and I'd really like to remind everyone involved of that.
Tensions have been running high in the French overseas territory since the 13th of May. Indigenous Kanaks who resent France's rule say a recent vote on changes to New Caledonia's provincial laws will erode their influence even further.
We, like all other Pacific Island people, have been colonized. But we didn't ask to be colonized. They didn't ask our permission to stay here.
I'll take school as an example. They don't even teach Kanak culture in school. They don't even teach the history of Kanak land in school. In history, they will teach us the story of Charles the King or all these people we don't even know, who aren't even from the country.
French President Emmanuel Macron says the bill voted by the National Assembly won't be pushed through, but he suggested holding a referendum on the overseas territory's electoral reform, a move which could ruffle feathers with pro-independence groups and worsen tensions in New Caledonia even further.
If you're just joining us, a reminder of our top story today. The UN Security Council convened an emergency meeting this Tuesday following an Israeli airstrike on a tent encampment in the southern Gaza city of Rafah that killed 45 people. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu admitting a tragic mistake amid growing international outcry. It's time now for some business news, and we can cross now to Jamil Ahmad in Dubai, Chief Analyst at GTC Group. Great to have you with us once again, Jamil. Tell us how are global markets faring this morning?
Thank you, Hexie. I think the global markets, you're looking at a bit of a range-bound activity, which isn't a big surprise when you consider that both the US and the United Kingdom were both on a public holiday yesterday. But we're looking towards some very key economic data this week, specifically the inflation reports in both the United States, which is going to be the Federal Reserve, which is the US Central Bank's preferred metric of
Headline news this hour. The UN says it is very unlikely rescuers will find more survivors from Friday's deadly landslide in Papua New Guinea. More than 2,000 are believed to be buried in the avalanche of rock and mud. Authorities are evacuating close to 8,000 people living near the site as fears go of further slips. Parts of South Asia hit by weather extremes. Temperatures in India and Pakistan have soared to above 50 degrees Celsius, while cyclone lashed the coastlines of India and Bangladesh, killing at least 16 people. World leaders have condemned Israel's airstrike, which killed at least 45 in the camp for displaced people in Rafah. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the attack was unintentional, describing it as a tragic mistake. And that is the latest from the CNN newsroom.
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Woodman. Have a good life.